just a cup of coffee. As you know, it is not an interview. It's just two friends getting together and people listen. If you listen to us, you can call us at 703-560-8225. The line is open, and just give us a call. Man, thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's an honor to be here.
So Matt was asking me before how I got involved in radio. I have a friend in 2008 who asked me if I can produce radio, and I said yes. I didn't have idea how to produce radio, but I said, just give me 3 months and I learned. So I came to Fairfax Public Access, where it's a place that you can learn everything, to be a radio producer, TV producer. Once you produce here, and this is a commercial for Fairfax Public Access, then you can have your own show. So I learned how to produce. I produced his show in FM, and then I decided to go back and have my own show. But I want to have a show that is just relaxed, because producing radio is absolutely hard. You have to prepare people, it's a lot of stuff. So I just want to have a cup of coffee with friends, and that's it. So they gave me the chance. I usually focus on inviting people from around the world. I love to invite immigrant community because I want to highlight them, how we are so productive people. And so I've been doing this for almost 10 years. I used to do it every Sunday at 3. And lately I used to do it during the week because it's easier for people to come. Sometimes the weekends are hard, now that running for school board is a little hard. So, Matt, tell me a little about you. Tell me what did you born? Tell me a little about yourself.
Right. Well, thank you for asking, and thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for that intro. I think if you're watching the video, my head just kind of expanded about a couple inches because of it's like, wow, who's this guy? I want to meet him. But for me, my name is Matt Truong. I actually was a boat people. I immigrated from Vietnam and landed here in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania in 1980 with 2 pair of clothes and 2 words of English, literally. And the 2 words the 2 words were yes and no, and that's what I learned on the plane on my way from Bangkok to New York, and was able to use the universal language, right? Head up and down means yes, and side to side is no. And I got an ice cream with that. So, and in fact, the embarrassing thing was, I never saw ice cream in that type of packaging before, and so the flight attendant has to open it up and show it to me. And so anyway, came here in 1980.
With your parents?
Actually, I came alone now. So let me back it up a little bit. My dad was a South Vietnamese soldier, and so after the war ends, and I'm going to make some air quotes, I'll specify, he was in the re-education camp, right, end quote, and my mom was at home with 7 kids, essentially.
Wow.
So I'm number 6 of 7, next to last child. And so she worked, again, we can talk about her because I love to chat about that, and if I may. She basically a single mom raising 7 children, actually became 6 because one of my sister, who was married to a naval officer, he's a Vietnamese officer, but he worked with American naval officers. And so when during the fall of Saigon, 1975, they, his colleagues, American colleagues, say, hey, go home, grab your family and all that, and then take them back, and we're leaving. And so my sister came home and said, hey, you want to go? And my mom said, hey, we got to wait for your dad. So anyway, fortunately, my oldest sister left and immigrated in the United States in 1975.
Just so one thing interesting. My mother was a single mother with 7 when I was only 6-year-old. Just continue. It's something amazing that we have something in common.
And it's amazing, I'll tell you. And again, I'm a little bit biased when I'm talking about my mom a little bit, but I think you understand that.
Totally.
But here's what the interesting thing was. Single mom, 6 children, right? She had a a free enterprise. She has a small business,
Yes.
right? And essentially is if you can imagine on the sidewalk on a busy street, and she lay down a blanket.
Yes.
It's not even a queen size,
Yeah,
like a full size blanket, and she put used glasses and bowls and dishes, used, not even new.
Yes.
And she's buying and selling, and that's how she raised 6 children.
Well, let me tell you something about my mother.
Yeah, please.
So my father was a tenor, meaning singing at the opera.
Oh.
And my mother decided to support him because he just loved to do that. So in the side, my mother sew. You know, she learned how to sew. So she used to always knocking doors, asking people, do you need anything in your house?
Right.
And the people would say, well, I need curtains. And she go back and sew it, and sell it. So then my father was very like 20 years older than my mother, and had an accident and died when I was 6.
Oh.
So with 7 kids,
Right.
for age from 6-year-old to 18 or 21, 7 kids, And my mother, he was doing a side, like doing this clothing thing. So she decided to grow her business, and she hired a tailor to do suits for men. She hired people who sewing. So she had like 4 people who sewing. So she began her business similar, doing just knocking doors to sell clothes. And then, she said, okay, you can pay me weekly, So weekly she comes and collect the money, And I always was in her feet.
Right.
Wherever she goes, she bring me because I was the little one. And I saw how she was selling. I was so impressed. I think I born to sell, because she was knocking doors and tell people. Coming back with your mommy, she was selling products just to sustain the kids. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's basically, and again, and thank you for sharing. And we have, frankly, I'm amazed that we have a lot in common.
I can't believe it.
So my mom, and it's amazing. Here's a woman, very humble, very laid back, very, not a typical salesperson.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
But I was amazed of how she was able to transact, and people were like giving her more money, or they're like, hey, and they're very kind to her.
Of course.
And she and I was totally impressed. And like you, I was next to youngest, so sometimes I come out there and help her with the carrying stuff. But then listen to how she talked to her clients and customers and even vendors, and there are people that says, hey, here's my used, for example, bowls and dishes. Keep it. Once you sell it, right, you pay me back.
Yes.
I mean, they basically gave her the entire inventory, and she didn't owe them anything. And they said, just hold on to it, sell it, and then come back with the money. So she was like, are you kidding? And they said, no. So to your point, and I'm throwing back at you because I want you to talk here.
Yes.
So your mom did even beyond that. So she actually created her own company and hired employees.
I know, I just so impressed.
Yeah.
So what she usually does, she take a newspaper, cut in the clothing, and then once you have all the clothing cut it out, she sent it to to this lady who lives around like 2 hours from. I always thought that was forever.
Yeah, you're young.
We have to bring in the clothing. We have to take 3 buses, and we arrive to this area where this lady has a beautiful machine, sewing machine. And my mother had an old one. This one has like a professional, and she will sew everything, and then my mother will come back, pick it up the clothes, and bring it to the people. No?
Yeah, and that's very smart, right? So if you're one person, right, you only do so much. Whereas if you farm it out, right, you got vendors, you got partners that do that,
and everybody get growing. So I was so impressed because I used to remember, when my father died, I was 5 years old or something, and I sleep with both since I born. So when my father died, my mother used to tell me, I'm here with you. She said, she was tricking me.
Oh.
And then I wake up in the middle of the night, and she was not there. And then she was like a little far away, but he will scream to me, I'm watching you, go sleep. And she will spend nights and nights just sewing.
Wow.
So later on, when I grow a little more, she used just to spend more time, And also it's just interesting how she decided instead of he was sewing so much in the night, he just hired these people. So entrepreneurship is coming in our own mothers.
Right, but I'll add one more thing to what you just said there, because not only that she's, economy of scale, if you want to talk about that, but more importantly, to your point, what she's doing is actually adding to the economy, right?
Exactly.
So then she hired people that actually do the work. So then more people surrounding her are actually leveraging enterprise to make themselves better to themselves and their family. So she creates jobs, right?
And I'm talking a mother, but maybe like yours, that she just have elementary school. She didn't go high school, because in that time, my mother, in that time, usually were the man who went to study.
Understood.
So most probably my mother did elementary, maybe middle school, but that's it. In that time was not like high school and go to college. Women was meant to marry a man, stay with a man, it doesn't matter what.
Right.
If he hits you, if he cheats you, you couldn't think about for a moment to leave the man,
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, it was tough, and to your point, it kind of, again, another similarity.
Yeah.
My mom, I think, 5th grade, 6, 7.
Exactly, yeah.
Let's be a little bit generous to that. But she was always, her mom and dad, her dad died very early, actually. And her mom was disabled, so she actually grew up young and basically be the parent to her parent, essentially.
Yes.
And so, she was doing that from a very young age.
So this is why we really have to put highlight these incredible women that worked so hard just to support us without thinking on themselves, They never thought take a cafecito, take a cup of coffee, or sell a cigar, or go to the beach, or but no, those women weren't on they're just couldn't do more.
Right, and look, I love what you said there, because here's what happened to me, right? So kind of go back. What I learned from about my mother, even though she didn't quote unquote teach me, say do this, do this, she taught me by her own action.
That's the point.
So because she was an entrepreneur. She passed. I gotta use past tense here. I gotta be careful. She was an entrepreneur. She treated people very well. She resonated with people. She knows how to prioritize.
Exactly.
In fact, she got my siblings, my sisters, to take care of the whole household and family. Right. So she deputized people. And then she works hard from day to night. just like your mom. I saw her, if I wake up early in the morning, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and I don't see her until 9, 10 o'clock at night.
And you come back home, and most probably your brothers fed you, your brothers put you to sleep, and then you're lucky, you will see your mother sometimes, that it was the hard. Well, the part of having 7 brothers and sisters is that I was the toy for the older ones. No, I was her doll.
So how many kids how many siblings did you have?
I'm the 7th.
Really? So you're the youngest? Okay, so we're very close. 6 or 7, you're 7 or 7.
I'm the 7th. And it's so interesting because after my father died, one of my sisters says, and I understand now that I'm pretty old.
Right.
Because she was I think she's the number 3. She said, I live it, I have the opportunity to go to live to France, and I want to do my master and my doctorate, and she said, I live it. So, but as soon as my father died, maybe 1 year later, she told me, I will go back. She told me, I will go back. Okay. She went to Europe and stayed there forever. But it's interesting. She always went. I have a sister who left a few years later, and she left, and you went to do as your sister.
Wow.
So I went to live. It's another story. But I went to just live with her in Europe. And in France, I lived for a couple of years with her. But it's so interesting. You came to the United States to see your sister. I went to Paris to live with her. So tell me about you.
Right. So going back a little bit.
Yeah.
So and here's the reason why I'm saying that too. And we can go any direction.
Yeah, of course.
So she became my our
Yes,
sponsor
yeah.
for everybody,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
And again, recently there was a law where the president
yes.
says something about
No
public
more.
charge, right?
Yes, yeah.
So if I may, right?
Yes, of course.
So it was amazing for me to hear that public charge announcement
Yes.
because that's not how I knew.
Yes.
Because when my sister sponsored me, when I landed
Yes.
in Thailand in a
Yes.
refugee camp, she was the actual sponsor. She did all the paperwork and she was like, I'm responsible for this
Yes.
person
And to bring him to the United
to bring
States.
United States. And then the other thing is when I get to United States,
Mhm.
her responsibility is to make sure that I either go to school, get a job, and be a productive citizen.
Absolutely, yeah.
And and to be fair, public service was not. I mean, we didn't know anything about it because she didn't tell us. She's like, look. Go
Yeah.
get a job,
Yeah.
go do your thing. And I had a number of jobs, whether it's summer or
Yeah.
night or evenings.
Mhm.
And so for me, I lived the American dream
Yes.
because I didn't know any other
That's
ways.
the other way. You
You're
just
right.
follow what was in the moment. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
So,
as the sister knew better than you.
well, you know what? And I would like to thank her, and everybody in our family would thank her. And I'll tell you the side story on that, right? So she, and again, it was tough. So let me
Yeah,
back it up.
absolutely, yeah.
You came to a country.
Yes.
You live in a town that you could not even communicate in your own natural language, okay?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
grew up in a blue collar corn town called Elizabethtown. You can look it up.
Yeah.
And there was an Asian family. It was Laotian, so obviously we couldn't communicate with them. I went to school, right?
And you were the only one.
I was the only, the two Asian people
Yeah.
in there, okay? And what's interesting was, and I grew up, and again, I'm going to use this word,
Yes.
it's a term of endearment.
Yes.
I grew up as a redneck.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm proud of that because I got to be fully integrated, right, into
Yeah.
United States.
Yes.
Because it's funny, we talked about this where I spoke with a few folks say, we drive trucks, we got gun racks,
Yes,
and
yeah,
we
yeah.
hunt, before we go to school, we carry a 4-inch blade,
Yeah.
and we're going, dirt
you-
hopping
but
and all that.
Let's do a parenthesis here, like a break. It's very important to say, wherever you hunt, you eat it.
Absolutely. In
Let's
fact,
clarify that. We hunt,
right.
we kill animals, but we eat them. And let me tell you here, my father was for a little town in a little ranchito, a little ranch in
Yeah.
Guadalajara. When he died, my mother says, your father wants you be more ranchera. Spend all your summers and so my father didn't spend time there because he wants to be a tenor. But I was part of the rancho. It's
Really?
called the Tepehuaje de Morelos. And the people, you kill to eat.
Right.
You go, the people go outside fishing and also go outside to kill these little birds and things to eat.
Yeah.
You bring the things and you eat them.
Right. And I'm so glad you bring it
Yeah.
in because here's the point, right?
Yes.
Guns
Yeah.
were meant to be a tool.
Tool. Exactly.
Tool.
Let's
Tool.
put them in
Right.
capital letters.
Yeah, tools. It
Mhm.
was meant to be a tool,
Yes.
right? It was not meant to hurt anybody. It was
Right.
meant to use to sustain life. And yes, we do eat everything that we hunt.
Yeah,
Okay?
my father's side, there were 14 kids, and before they got to home, they had to clean in the guns. They had to prepare them. Of course, in that time was no schools to teach you how to clean guns, and
Oh.
my father's brother died when they were cleaning a gun.
Oh.
But I want to go back to the point.
Oh, okay.
We are in a society that before you have a gun, you take a class, you learn how to clean it, you have to use it, and you have the permit to use it.
Right.
But anyhow, in our time was like go find food.
Right. Well, so I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Now, so here's the thing, right? Guns or tools,
Yes.
right? And I have another side story to that. You respect guns. Guns is
Absolutely.
like a scissor, is like a
Yes.
knife.
And you need
Right.
you need to know how to use it, because
need to know how
if
to
you
use
open the thingy, the other person,
Right.
I don't know how it's called, the thing that you have all the knives, and if you open the other side, you could yourself. You know?
Right. So the point here, it is something that could hurt you. You
Yes.
need to respect it.
Mhm.
You need to know how to use it. You
And
need to
when
how
to
to
use it.
maintain it, and you know when to use it.
Uh-huh.
And notice it has nothing to do with hurting people.
That's the point.
Right. That's the
Absolutely.
point. Now, so here's the story. Right. And
And
I
then you
live-
go to work in the morning before you go to school. I can't believe it.
Exactly. So we have weapons in our car, in our
Uh-huh.
truck, at
Yes.
the high school parking lot, and we have a knife, typically in our pocket.
Unbelievable.
Right now, to be fair, there were some skirmish, some fist fights, and all that. But I
Absolutely.
don't remember. This is 1986.
Yes.
It wasn't that long ago. Well,
Yeah.
or at least in my mind, it wasn't
Yeah.
that long ago. And we had fist fights, and no one bothered to say, "Hey, let me pull out a blade or run out of the car."
Yeah.
It just it never occurred in our minds.
Yeah. That is something interesting.
What happened?
Because I remember when I was in high school the same. I never see, so people carry the knives, people do everything, but I never see inside the schools killing kids inside the high schools.
Right.
Like in DC when I was doing a program in DC. Lock out the DC school because a kid was just stopped.
Mhm.
Somebody, this gang killed another kid at school. In that time, we didn't see that.
Right, and go back just a hair, if I may,
Yes.
right, to your point about and sorry to hear about your
My brother,
your
yeah.
brother's
My
right,
father's
brother, right, your uncle, right.
My
So the key things here is gun safety is extremely. I want to emphasize that, and we both emphasize that.
Absolutely.
You got to know how to use it, and gun safety is important, just like a car. You got to
Yes.
know how to use it.
And if you
right?
have guns, God bless you. You have to have a space, a specific safeguard to put your guns. I will never. So like, we go to we have no guns because I say we will own guns when my sons are out the house. I prefer to do that. But I know people that have this big safe box with a lot of locks that
Right.
you put your guns there and then you put it down and you go to the range and you go shooting at the range and come back and put it back in the safety.
Right. So, and thank you for clarifying. It's a weapon, it's a tool,
Yeah.
and you want authorized people to use it.
Yes.
So lock everything, right?
Mhm.
So the other thing is, again, everything assume that it is loaded,
Yes.
right?
You
Always
are.
assume that it's loaded. And second is you make sure that your hand is not on the trigger.
Yes.
And then on top of that, there's 4 rules. So now I'm
Yes.
simplifying here,
Yes.
right? Is whatever you think, if whatever you're aiming at, that's where, make sure that you expect it to destroy it, right? Quote
Yeah.
unquote, and the things beyond that,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
So
that-
these are just fundamental.
And I go almost every weekend to the range to shoot because it's something that
Really?
I love it. I just love it.
Well, I have a.
I know. I know. And
Come on.
You did just an event recently.
I had an event, and again, go ahead, finish your point, and I'll add in.
But so when we go there, neither where I've been almost as savvy, they're still coming to you and says, remember to point at the gun to the
Right.
range, not to you.
Downrange, yeah.
downrange. I don't think it's. I just love it. I'm very good, and I just.
Women tend to be better, actually.
It's funny, my husband is not so good, and my kids used to go with us, but now the little one is in college. But it's just thinking like fascinating, but safety.
Safety first, always safety first. Downrange, all of that, right? So, I every so often I put on a gun safety. I call it range night,
Yes.
but that's basically getting everybody together who also value Second Amendment, but
Yes.
also care about gun safety.
Absolutely.
Right, that's the key things. And so the last event I had was at in Manassas. I won't
Yeah.
mention the vendor, and we had 47 people from various point in Fairfax, Prince William, and also in Loudoun County. and I would say about a third of those people were women that never ever shot before, never even
the
touched.
women usually don't. You don't see a lot of women, but it's an organization that is just help women to learn about guns.
Right, and then of course I brought, and I knew that, so I brought my 22 LRs,
Yeah.
which is very simple,
Yeah,
light, easy, low recoil,
Yes.
both a pistol and a rifle. And so I let them try it out,
Oh,
and of course I
that's
stand
wonderful.
there, I help them and all that. And after, the hardest part is the first time, right?
Yeah.
Where do you hold? What do you do?
Yeah.
You know, the recoil and all that. But I tell you, within 3 to 5 minutes, they were like, "Wow, this is really good." And it's like, "Is this easy?" And I was like, "No, this is it."
Yeah. Let me just put a commercial.
Yeah,
Then
sure.
we come back in a second. Oh my God, this is so good.
Yeah,
I
it's a lot of
love it.
fun.
I
I
love
didn't know you shoot.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Where do you go?
I go to this in London.
Silver Eagle.
Yes, they just moved to another place. You saw that they closed them all one and move and move and move.
But not that far away.
No,
from
no,
there,
no, no.
right?
It's just a beautiful place, and I just think that
It's a better looking.
yeah, it's nicer, a little nicer, but it's still full all the time. You know, it's kind of they
Yeah.
overcrowd a little.
I called them a few times about doing like a group shoot,
Yeah.
and they never called me back. So I think they don't want to do that because they're too busy.
They're too busy anyhow.
Right. Whereas elite shooting sport, they're like the last time we shot,
Yeah.
we have the entire range. They have like 3-4 ranges.
So we're here again. I would just always try to put that commercial down for Fairfax Podcasts who give me the chance to do this radio show. So continue talking about guns. So you were mentioning the rules, so the safety points.
Yeah. Bottom line here
Yes.
is respect it, and
Mhm.
assuming is always loaded. So
Yes.
watch where you're pointing.
Yeah.
That's all.
So we're coming back to go back to the. So he and I, we can spend 8 hours in radio, and you will just fascinate in our conversation. But let's go back to high school. You were, tell us you are redneck, and you used to go kill, what to say, hunting in the mornings before you go to school.
Well, absolutely. So, especially during hunting season, and this you're talking about Corntown,
Yes, is that like
E-Town.
the
So,
direction,
yeah. So look, and you hunt early in the morning. I mean,
Yes,
deer
absolutely.
usually to come out to feed or to graze in the morning, and so we typically, leave pretty early, 4:30,
Yeah.
5 o'clock. Hunt a couple of hours and then
Yeah.
run into the class, and then we'd just take our jackets and stuff
Yeah.
and our guns and go into school. So bottom line there is this was 1986, Laura. This was 1986.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
happened to our high school with our children, with the moral value of life? I mean, what happened?
No, it's just I've been thinking a lot. After the shooting in Virginia Tech, that time the Virginia Tech. I was just thinking, it's because maybe, all these games, that
Right.
the I forgot the names, but all these names that the kids are playing, that is shooting each other, that killing the soul. Anyhow, all these games
Right.
that suddenly came like a wave.
Right. So I have a theory on that. So I'll throw it out and you
Yes,
tell
tell
me,
me.
right? Yes, I would say there's part of that because when in a game when you die you spawn, as my son,
Yeah, okay.
you
Yes.
spawn. You don't reset or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Spawn, right? And of course, I was joking with him. It's like that's not how it works in real life.
Yeah,
When
you
you're
die,
dead,
you die.
you're done, right? So that's number one. But number two, I think, and that's games might have to do, but personally, and again, I'm no expert, so I'll put the qualification there. I think it comes back to family value and the moral value, in my
You're
personal.
And family. Just
Family.
Family. What's
Family.
happening in this society?
Yeah. So again, I have a theory on that too,
Uh-huh.
and then please chime in, right?
Yes.
My perspective about family is this, and I'm quoting from one of the author. There's a fairly recent book by the last name of the author is Farrell, Farrell, and it's about boys.
Yes.
And the stats, which is very simple to say here, is, and again, it's just
Yes.
over 90% of bad people are men, not women, men. So hence bad men seems to be an accurate term. So that on top of that, but here is the catcher. Here's a kicker to all this. And they said that over 90% of those bad men came from single family home. What does that mean to you? That means most likely what? Mom, but not dad.
Yeah, and I was a little nervous. You know, when I was I have a foundation helping Hispanic women to go to college, and I was focusing women in DC. I'm focusing minority women. I help Hispanic women and women from Africa. What I learned around that time, it was so interesting. First of all, I learned that most of these mothers that not necessarily are for countries like Asia, Africa, or Latin America. So they said these women have one kid, and then with one father, and then they have another one because they were in welfare, and then a third one and a fourth one because welfare was good in DC. And then what happened? The kids go in gangs. And also Latino mothers that sometimes they don't have time to watch the kids because they work in 2 times. So I found absolutely it's a lot of women in general. We cannot say any race specifically, that when they get a single mother and they break the relationship like a family, then the kids don't have any. They don't have this kind of center where they get together and the sharing. They don't have a man that would be a feature.
Right. So if I would say this way, what let me clarify. I'm not saying that single moms are bad. Okay, look, essentially you and I, right?
We coming from families that were mothers, that were who raised us.
Okay, so
we couldn't say that. But what happened in our time, like 20, 30, 40 years ago, to say, the women were more conservative. They preserved the values as a family, neither where the father was not there. She's still having those values to preserve the group as a group, as a family, neither where the men were not there.
Right, but on top of that, for me, even though that, 360, let's say 360 days out of a year, right? My mother was there, but my father wasn't. He was a soldier, so
he never was with you.
He was never with me. Now, nevertheless, the other 5 days that he's home, right? I mean, my mom would go through the list of things that I have done wrong, right, throughout a year, and then my dad would punish me for it, right? So there was, my point was not he like a bad guy, he also set boundary in terms of what's right and wrong.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's to me is about the boundary. Now, I'm not, and to this author, his point of view was, he's not blaming the mother. He's saying that without a father, and kids, boys, tends to look up to fathers, and also father tends to be the one who are the disciplinarian. There's the one that say it's right or wrong. There's a certain boundary.
Absolutely.
And without the men in the home, what the fathers in the home, then the boys especially saying, well, I can do anything I want because mom is busy or whatever. And
she's
so it tends to go down the wrong path. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So that was coming so how we see the change in the society now, that and the schools are promoting more, you are free to do whatever, you can sleep with whatever, instead of promoting families. You have to establish yourself, have a family, then have kids, then grow your family. So in the schools or in the society, they're forgetting about the importance of the family.
Well, and I love what you said there. So 2 things I'll add on top of that. So one, societies don't promote family, and 2, now again, I'm not blaming people, but here's my theory, right? That look, United States is a very generous country.
Absolutely.
Okay, and most politicians, right, have a noble goal to help their constituents.
Absolutely. Yes.
However, right, so here's where my however, when they have certain laws sometimes, even though it meant to be great things, it turns out that it does have an unintended consequences. So I'll
Yes.
go back to your point about, women that, single mom that have more than one kids because they'll have better, more welfare checks
Yes,
and
I
all
listen
that.
to you. Uh-huh.
And then because of that, they tend to have more children because that means they
Yeah.
have more income. Now, it was not meant, the laws were not meant to do that, but
Mhm.
there were consequences by doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's why we got to be very careful. And I'm saying that we all want to do the right thing,
Yes.
but there are certain things that we do does have a side effect.
Absolutely. So we have just to be careful. And we have around 10 more minutes. Continue with this conversation. We will invite Matt to come back and continue talking this. Moving forward, so where did you go to college? What do you study?
Yes, I graduate from Penn State, and there's
Oh
a
my
there is a
God.
very
Wow.
interesting story, right? So, my point of view was we could not afford to go to college,
I can imagine.
so I actually went to VOTEC school, vocational technical school.
Okay.
I was going to be an auto mechanic actually.
Okay.
And and then they screwed up my grade for
Oh.
some reason, so I had to go to see the counselor. And when the counselor saw my grades,
Yeah.
I mean, my math was pretty good,
Yeah,
English
yeah,
was,
absolutely. Yeah.
And she said, "Well, why don't you go to college?" And I said, "Well, I can't afford it."
Yes.
And she
Yeah.
said, "Well, there's a FIA grant." And I
Oh,
said,
that's
"What is
wonderful.
FIA?"
Uh-huh.
And she said, "Well, Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
scholarship and
Yeah.
whatever." And say, "Well, you should consider applying for Pell." I was
Yeah.
like, "What is Pell?"
Yeah. It's,
Right.
they're talking to you like to the student and to the parents that we know everything. You know?
Right. Well, they assume,
Yeah.
right? Again, their assumption is your parents know what's
Oh,
going
yes,
on in your
absolutely,
lives. And then
yeah.
again, I'm not blaming my parents.
No.
I'm just saying they didn't know. I mean,
It's
they
very
barely
hard
speak
for an
English.
immigrant parents to get involved, especially how to help the students. By the way.
Right. And so, and then the last comment she made was, "Well, you should take an SAT." And I say, "Well, how do you spell SAT?"
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So long story short, I took the SAT, got a little bit of money, actually had a part-time job, and actually working part-time and went to school
Unbelievable.
full-time.
Mhm.
And as an auto mechanic at Sears Auto, changing tires and
Yeah.
replacing batteries, and earn my way through all that.
Amazing. Yeah.
So I graduated with the engineering degree, electrical engineering
Okay.
degree, stay on and got a scholarship, and there's another story.
Yeah.
And got a fellowship, actually, got a graduate degree in electrical engineering, and then went out and work and have done 3 successful startups and 2 business and have my own business, and now working for a large multi-billion Fortune 500
And
company.
that's the thing that we bring in what we learned when we were with our mothers. Tell me what you met your wife. I love that love stories.
Okay. There is a short version of that as well. So I was in transition to be a graduate student. A friend of mine introduced me to this girl. The reason why we supposed to meet with her,
Yeah.
because I became the VSA, Vietnamese Student Association president,
Okay.
that following fall. And he said, "Well, that's my friend's sister. You should, you're the president, so you got to meet these people." And I said, "Okay, fine."
Yeah.
And then I met her, and she looked, at the time, it was not love at first sight, to
No.
be clear, because I thought she was way younger.
Oh,
Right, so I was a graduate student. She came in as a freshman, and she looks way young, like you going to college? I mean, and it took us almost a month, and I think second or third meeting where I found out, and she kind of leaked it. And the other piece that worked out really well, it's weird because there was her friend, a woman friend, that really liked me.
Oh wow.
And so this woman says to my wife at
your
like,
friend,
"Hey, do you know this guy, man?
Yeah.
Can you ask him question about him
Yeah.
for me?" And so my wife became the mediary
For the other girl.
For the other girl.
Wow.
Now, she didn't think anything about me
Yeah.
either, and I didn't think anything
Yeah.
about her. And lo and behold, I guess we
Okay.
cannot call it love at the first sight, but it turns out that you cannot. God has a plan for you, and here's the reason why I
Yeah.
put God in there, because prior to that, I had 4-year relationship with another Vietnamese
Okay.
woman,
Look at that.
and at that point, when I'm during
Yeah.
that time.